Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Talking Timepieces, where we talk about watch collecting and horology. Uh, Thanks for watching. I really appreciate all of your participation. And those of you who are subscribed, I really appreciate it. But a lot of you aren't. Give it a try. Subscribe. Doesn't cost anything, but it helps the channel. It increases our standing within YouTube and the logarithms and such, and gives us an opportunity to do more for more people. Um, this week, I started a new short playlist series called Three Watch Collection Suggestion. And I'm just putting together various sets of watches that either I've managed to get my hands on. Like, for example, the one that I just posted, the Sea Dweller is my son in law's. But I encourage you to check it out. They're going to be very short, and I'm just putting together various assortments of three watches, and it kind of ties into the watch strategies topic that we're starting today. And that's the aspect of even people who say they have a one watch collection, they usually have two watches because unless your one watch is a G-Shock, right way up, unless your watch is a G-Shock, right, then you're going to need a beater watch, something that you would rather not take, you know, to the one you would take to nasty places that you would rather not take the nice watch, be it because of dirt or danger. I did a short piece on a really cheap watch that just happened to have two time displays and quartz didn't look halfway bad. And I suggested, hey, that's a good travel beater. It's not that you have to worry about having the watch beaten up, but you might have to worry about yourself getting beaten up if you're wearing too fancy a watch. But being able to track two time zones while you're traveling is still very useful. And see, so that ties into watch strategies because it all comes down to how do you decide to buy the watches that you wear? You know what I mean? Daniel, how's it going, my friend? San Antonio, there you go. Beautiful city. Been there before myself for trade shows. There's also, I know there's a big military base there, but I never wound up going there. I was stationed at Goodfellow in San Angelo when I went to training after basic. But Texas is an interesting place. Let's leave it at that. San Antonio is a beautiful city. Um, but again, without you all in the audience, this channel would be nothing. I would just be some weird guy who likes watches talking to myself in my living room. But the whole aspect of collecting, frankly, the thought about collecting never even entered my head for most of my life. And I've been a watch guy since almost day one. I got my first watch, a Timex my mom gave me for my communion in second grade. And I always made sure I had a nice watch to wear. I never thought about having multiple watches. But then again, I didn't have very many means growing up. Most young people don't. So I also didn't have that much of an ability to collect watches when I was a young man, but I always made sure I had at least one nice watch on my wrist, usually a Seiko. When Swatch first came out, I really liked some of their early chronos, which was nice. And, buying nice, inexpensive watches is also a collection strategy. How do you get into watches? And that's one of the points that I wrote down about actually how do you get into it. We did a video earlier on the various tiers of watches and who makes which tier and all, and that's one aspect of the strategy of collecting watches. Um, but the other aspect is, how do you choose which tier? Where do you start? Do you start from the bottom and work your way up? Do you think about maybe a grail watch and work towards that one high horology masterpiece or whatever it is that you choose to get? Um, that's all. Those are all really important questions because every choice you make in creating your collection significantly impacts all of your other choices, because since we're talking about even millionaires who collect watches have finite resources. So it's this minute repeater from Vacheron or that minute repeater from Patek. Very few. I mean, there are some, but not too many collectors buy both. Some do. Jay Z has a great watch collection. I understand, and he's not the only one. There are quite a few people who have that kind of money that can pretty much buy whatever they want. But we're not those people. At least I'm not. You know, I'm just a guy who spends all of my extra money on watches, and the rest I waste. I just live in a I said it before. I'm just a journalist banging away over here in Europe. Don't rent my own place. I'm the equivalent of the guy who lives in a small apartment and has a Mustang, 5.0 sitting in front of the apartment. Nobody blinks two eyes at that, but wow, you tell people that you don't own a car and you have a bunch of watches, and they look at you funny. And frankly, it wasn't until I sold my car, because I was a big car guy, that I got into watches as a collector. Prior to that point, I finally gotten my hands on two watches, but it was because a friend of mine gave me his to sell, and because not specifically at that time because I was a watch guy, but he felt that if I sold it in here in Germany, because he lived in the state, we used to hang out here in Germany when he was working for the Ramstein Audio Club, and I used to sell to the PX system back in those days. And so he moved back to the States, and he thought he could get more money for it here back then. And I think he more thought that he could more easily find people interested in buying one here, as opposed to Kankakee, Illinois, where he was living at the time, or still does actually. But so I had, and ironically, I already had a Breitling. I had a Bluebird, which was the matte finish Blackbird with a blue face, which I sold because back then they were big, but I think they're 39s, which is a little small for today. And now that larger watches are available and I have a larger wrist, I wear the larger, like, wristwatch check. I'm wearing a Navitimer right now, but the 46, I believe, or the 44. I forget which, but they're pretty big. They're pretty big. Not as big as that Messerschmitt 65 millimeter I have, but yeah, pretty big. But yeah, so right off the bat, the first question to me, when starting out, if you really want to get into watches, let's say you like watches and you're like, I'd like to know more, and maybe you don't know anything. Um, you still have to inform yourself, if only enough to be a little dangerous in that sense, because you might be making decisions based on not completely formed knowledge base. Like when I first started, I was really interested in movements, and I managed to buy some really interesting pieces. Actually, I bought a German brand. I forget the name; it might pop into my head, but it had a Polyot 3133 movement in it, because at one point, when Russia was going through some really tough times, Polyot sold some of their movements on the market, which they normally don't do. And this German watch company actually put some into their chronos, and it was an open heart as well. Junkers, and we're talking under $1,000 for a watch like that. And I bought it, and I was really enjoying it, and I realized that there were so many nicer pieces out there. Not that the Junkers was a bad piece, but it's like, again, talking about cars. You get a nice car and you think, wow, imagine if I had better, exhaust system, nicer engine, better tires, better suspension, whatever. And as cars with watches, you can do some of that to the watch, but you can't really swap out the movement, like you would swap an engine out in a car. And actually, nowadays, most people would just simply buy the car that they want and sell the one that they have, which is what a lot of watch people do. But then that's also part of the collection strategy. Are you buying these watches to sell eventually? Are you buying them to create a permanent collection? That also determines what level you start at. Because we touched on that the last discussion with, like, maybe you start with some vintage pieces like the Bulova Accutron tuning fork. Come on, get some focus on this for me, please. Oh well, let's not. But a piece like that is one that you could start with, enjoy because of its novelty, and keep it as you move upwards or sideways. I mean, you don't have to go upwards in price. You can just change the pieces you get as you become more informed about what is available in the marketplace. You can build a very respectable collection with watches that would be each under $1,000, like the Bull of a Devil Diver, or the khaki field. Like think of a three-watch collection. Get yourself an Orient Bambino for the suit, a khaki field for the sport, and a Bull of a Devil Diver for the diver, and you're out maybe 2,500 bucks, $2,000 for the three pieces that are really good watches. And that's one approach, right? Maybe you do that and then think to sell them, or you do that and think to keep them as your B team, for when you do want to go places where you don't want to risk, your higher value pieces. So that's a legitimate way to start. It all depends on how you like to think of it. Are you buying these as stepping stones? I don't like the term entry level, but you could say starter. Are you looking these as starter pieces to inform yourself more about the marketplace? Or are you looking at every piece you buy should be permanently in the collection? And those are both completely different approaches and will give you completely different results. You know, I kind of tread in between. I buy pieces and I think I really want to keep it for the collection and it's really worth having, even though I don't wear it a lot. You know, in my mind, it's important to own it. Like this Walkman flyback chrono, right? This is a 1970s flyback, and it has an extra pusher because you have to reset the you have to reset the totalizers as well, the subdials. You have to reset the minutes and the hours on the flyback because it was cheaper to make the flyback mechanism in a way that you had to zero all the dials independently before you could start using it as a stopwatch, which is an interesting, way to do it. And so for me, that's a horologically significant piece. And it's nice enough looking. It's big enough that I can wear it, casually. I have it on a black NATO. This is a nice, summer beer garden watch. And because it's a flyback, it gives you something to talk about if you wind up in a conversation and you have nothing else to say. you know, um, or you could say, for example, start with the basics, as they say. Buy a G-Shock. Start with that. Get a G-Shock with hands. Wear that around, and as you get more comfortable with wearing a watch that doesn't do a million things for you, um, then you can migrate sideways. You could buy, for example, a vintage piece, a nice vintage piece. This is a great suit watch. This is a Girard Perregaux from the 50s. Got a bumper winding mechanism. It's a beautiful piece, and it's worth about 300 bucks. And Girard Perregaux is a very respected manufacturer. This is a beautiful piece. Um, there are a lot of ways that you can start, and in my case, I've got pieces that cost 10 times what this costs, but this is a really nice piece. It has a piece of history in it. The whole bumper drive versus the rotary weight. It's all part of horological history in that sense, right? So it's an inexpensive way to have something cool in the collection that doesn't break the bank, which is another reason to collect, for example, pocket watches. I have a repeater pocket watch. I couldn't afford a repeater wristwatch, but I have a repeater. Or you could, for example, go with something completely funky. Like I got this really nice Sorna from the 70s, and it's very 70s. It's so busy. You could just see somebody sitting on a plaid couch while they're wearing it, you know? And yet, I mean, we're not talking about a lot of money here. It was about a $500, $800 watch. Um, and it could be your daily wear. It's a rugged, nice looking, funky looking piece that you can have fun with. But then some people say, no, 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 I want that Rolex. I want that Omega, you know. they want to maybe get that grail piece, and that would be then the anchor and the foundation, the start of their collection. I had a friend who I sold my Seamaster GMT, but he already had a bunch of cheaper watches, less expensive watches, um, and he felt that this was going to be his first, serious buy, which is why I sold it to him because I really liked that watch, but I wanted to encourage him in his hobby. And so to him, that nice piece, that anchor piece, is now going to be the foundation of his new collection. And that's another way to go about doing it. But I have another friend who's a banker. He's got the money, and he owns 2 dozen $500 watches. And there's nothing wrong with that. But again, you could take that 2 dozen or more of $500 watches and buy 2, 3 serious pieces. You don't have to buy $10,000 watches to buy a serious piece. I really like my Captain Cook, my Rattle Captain Cook Chrono, and it retails for 45. I got it well before they raised the prices this year, but I got it when it first came out. I managed to Presbyterian the guy down to 35. For 3,500, that is a fantastic chrono diver. You don't have to break the bank to get a respectable piece, but you also have to think about, what are you buying? Are you buying the brand? Are you buying the functionality? Are you buying the style? If you want a moon phase, you're limited to who you can buy from. If you want a moon phase sport, limits you even more. If you want a moon phase with loom or chrono functionality, it limits you more to who you can buy that watch from. Some functionality, some complications are not available from every watchmaker. Like my recent episode, I talked about GMT. For a long time, GMT was the redheaded stepchild. For a long time, uh, nobody had GMTs. There were maybe 2, 3 GMTs out there. I'd go to duty free because I'm always looking at watches, and sometimes you see some interesting models in duty free. Um, and you'd figure in a duty free shop at an airport, they'd have at least one GMT watch. And I'd often go and there wouldn't be a single GMT watch in the shop. And now you can't turn around for stumbling over a GMT. Sometimes it's time to railroad. I think the connected world prompted the greater adoption of a GMT watch, because there are people who do like to wear a mechanical watch. There are also people who, by nature, you can't enter a secure facility wearing an electronic watch. So a lot of people who do very serious things for a living go to secure places where they can't wear an electronic watch. And so I think it's both a cute function, it adds to the watch, and it doesn't change the balance of the face because it's, in most cases, it's done as a second hand. I mean, as a third hand. Now there are, ironically enough, I do have my IWC. The GMT is in the little window underneath, so at least it's center bottom, so it doesn't throw off the symmetry of the dial. But dial design is obviously a very, very complicated issue, and how to balance a dial is a very important thing. Well, that's why, for example, a lot of people believe that finally they got it right with the new Air King, because not only did they make it a true sports version now with the sports clasp, because they used to have the regular Oyster Perpetual clasp on the Oyster bracelet, and the 05 now instead of the 5, it balances the dial better. Um, the way That's one of the reasons. Like, a lot of people wonder, why is it 4 with 4 bars on a Roman numeral watch, right? If you look at a watch with Roman numerals on it, like a Cartier, it's the 4 is 4 bars instead of 1 bar and a V, because in Roman numerals you put the number before it and it subtracts. So you have the V for 5 and the 1 before it means 4. You don't see IV for 4 on a Roman numeral watch. You see 4 with four ones. But that's to optically balance the 8 on the other side, which is a 5 and 3, which is a big, wide numeral. So they do the 4 bars on the one side to balance the face of the watch. Um, little piece of watch trivia there for you. So, balancing the face is a serious thing, and making things look good on a watch. I mean, think about the gyrations that they went through to make this face. I mean, there was probably spaghetti all over the walls at that meeting talking about how to actually make this watch look, and it looks good in the flesh. It looks really good. This is a very attractive piece for something as busy as it is. But then again, talk about talk about busy faces, right? And the Navitimer is also a good looking watch for as busy as it is. Hey, Bravo Delta, how's it going? How's it going, my friend? So, let's see. Once you get past that aspect, am I going from high to low? Am I starting with an anchor piece? Am I buying a bunch of lower, more cost-effective pieces? Because there's a strong argument to buy homages, buy some Steinhardts, buy some San Martins, um, buy some Paganis of the watches you would like to own, and then you can at least get an idea if that form factor is good for you, if that style is good for you, if that level of complications, the functionality is right for you. So if you bought, say, for example, a Pagani Speedmaster homage and a Saint Martin Explorer homage and a Steinhardt sub homage, you'd have a healthy idea of what those watches would be in the flesh. The real ones, well, yeah, they are the real ones because these are homages. What the real ones would be on your wrist, and you're out $200 for all three, maybe 250. That's a legitimate way to start collecting. Also, play with the watches that you would like to own, because like someone once commented on one of mine, because everybody knows I'm really really down on fakes. And they said, well, I buy the fake so I can visualize what the real one looks on my wrist. Buy an homage and you'll know what it looks like on your wrist. And it was probably closer to the weight and size than the fake in some ways. If it's like, say, for a dive watch or something like that, that Steinhardt puts really good steel in their divers, just because they look exactly like a Submariner. Um, they're homages, but they're well-made homages. And the fact that Steinhardt, that San Martin, that Pagani put their names on it, that means if you have a problem with it, you can go back to them, which is different from a fake. Who you're going to go to, right? Um, so you could make the argument that starting collection by buying homages of the ones you eventually want to buy and playing with them is a legitimate approach. And some people would say, no, I know what I want and I want to get that anchor piece. Or you could, like I said, go the route and buy the pop watches. I shouldn't say, by pop I mean popular, not necessarily pop as in shallow, because a lot of fashion watches, Boss and Fossil and Michael Kors. I mean, they're not bad watches, but they're not horologically significant in any way. Whereas the Bull of a Devil Diver is a nice piece and it's got a good following and it has an interesting history. Or Khaki Field, the Hamilton Khaki Field, or Seiko 5, and now they have a new GMT. And the Seiko 5 has a tremendously long legacy in horological history. You don't have to break the bank to buy a watch that is respected by your fellow watch collectors if you worry about that kind of thing. I mean, you shouldn't, but it is nice to know that your taste is reinforced by your peers, but it's not necessary. You should walk your own path and wear the watch because you like the way it looks on your wrist. If you're wearing a watch for the way you think other people are going to be thinking of it, you're already behind the 8 ball, because trying to please other people is a evil treadmill covered with spikes, because you're never gonna satisfy everybody, especially in a collector's realm like watches. There's always going to be some D-nozzle that is going to just out snob everybody else. So, you have to be true to yourself before you can even think about it, because unless you're happy with what you're doing personally, you'll always be sensitive to criticism from outside, because you're not wearing it because of your convictions, you're wearing it because of others. And so you're uncertain as to whenever you get a reaction that you're not expecting. But if you're wearing it because you care about what you're wearing, you don't care what other people think. And that's the best way to function, because then you get to enjoy your life, and take the breaths the deep of the depth that you choose. Because watches, you don't even need to wear a watch today. So wearing a watch is a statement. So if you're wearing a statement, shouldn't that statement represent who you are? Who you are at as deep a level as you can express in a mechanical device? But what I always like to say is watches are a language for other watch collectors. You see someone wearing a watch, or a certain watch at a certain time, or a certain watch in a certain configuration. Like, I've always fond of saying, I bumped into a guy wearing a Seiko Alpinist on a NATO strap. Anybody wearing a Seiko Alpinist on a NATO strap is a watch collector. They don't sell them like that. And the Alpinist is not your average over the counter watch. And putting a NATO strap, and with the tuck and all of that as well. You look at the person and boom, watch guy. There's no other conclusion that you can draw, because who else would wear an Alpinist on a NATO? Or, like, I'm fond of pointing out, that's one of the reasons I like wearing my pieces on NATOs or rubber straps, because it dresses them down so I can wear them casually. But anybody sees me wearing a Cartier Santos XL on a rubber strap, they know I'm a watch guy. And who else but a watch guy would put a Cartier on a rubber strap? You know, there are people who are probably having paroxysms watching this, going, "How dare he besmirch the car?" Because some people look at it as you're actually lowering the watch. I look at it as I'm dressing it down. It's like, putting on the sandals once in a while instead of the hard shoes. Because there are times I put the alligator back on it. I've worn, wear it with a suit, but you can't wear it with a suit every day unless you wear a suit every day. And I don't wear a suit every day, so I like to wear my watches. So I often dress my watches down by putting them in NATO or rubber, which is why. But at least the nice thing about a company like Breitling, they make factory rubber. This is a beaut. This is the factory rubber. It even has the Breitling embossed on the side, but it's not too outrageous, so it's not doesn't attract too much attention. But the color, it works fantastically. Same thing with my Polaris. I finally bought the factory rubber strap for my Polaris, and I'm happy as a pig in slop, because it doesn't make the trouble with a metal strap is it does make the watch look very it draws the eye to the watch a lot more than if you didn't have a shiny bracelet on it, obviously. And so, yeah, that's why I do lean more towards leather, NATO, and rubber, because that's how I like to express, my collection. Because that's also part of the collection strategy. What? Hey, oh yeah, here, I said hi to Bravo Delta and to Daniel. Um, it's when you think about it, what roles do you want the watches in your life to play, in your outfits, in your style? You know what I mean? So, because a G Shock is all well and good, but and there are people who will wear it with a suit, but it does look better to wear a watch more suitable with a suit, and you don't have to break the bank. I was, talking about the Orient Bambino. You can get that watch for a little over $100, and it looks nice in a suit, and it's mechanical, and it works well. And Orient's owned by Seiko. The QC is there, and Orient has their own um, manufacturing arm, as it were. They do their own watches under the Seiko umbrella, and there are some Orients that are better than the comparative Seikos that cost more. The Orient Diver Day Date is an awesome piece. And that's, like I said, that's part of another strategy as well. You could stay in highly respected, low price pieces and be set for the rest of your collection life, and always find cool, interesting new things to buy. Or again, like I said, the best in my mind is a little bit of a mix. A couple of vintage pieces, a couple of interesting pieces, a couple of pieces just for fun, and a couple of heavy hitter pieces. And the nice thing about watches is you don't use them up. They don't get burned up. They don't get burned out. They're not like tires or exhaust systems or other wear parts on a car that cost a colossal amount of money and that you never get back, right? You buy that watch, like when I think of some of the pieces in my collection that, I've paid several $1,000s for several years ago, they're still here. Maybe I have to have them serviced and that might cost me money, but as long as I do, they'll be worth market value for the foreseeable future. Not that I want to sell them, but they're still in my collection. I've ridden more cars into the ground, I mean, just driven them to the point where either I had to sell them or I didn't have the capability to repair them myself. Um, and none of that money gets realized. And with watches, even though watches aren't an investment vehicle, they are a value retention vehicle. And you may not get a profit, but you'll always get money. And sometimes all you need is money. Um, In fact, I just got to deal with some international tax stuff from the US. I might have to skip a purchase. I wanted to buy that stupid, not shouldn't say stupid, but I'm feeling bad about the thing. I wanted to buy that Omega alarm watch. Now I got to put it off. The dealer's going to wait for me for a few months now, but I got to take care of this tax thing, pay that off before I can even think about buying more watches. And that's the other side of the coin. Collecting strategies. You've got to have your strategy match your budget. Never, ever, 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 ever buy a watch on credit. Never. Save up for it. And as I always like to point out, if you save up for a watch, that gives you the time to research that watch and make sure it's the one you want to buy, right? It gives you the time to really think about that purchase, and then it's not just a kitty where you're saving the money for the watch. It turns into a watch purchase war chest. Maybe you decide to buy a completely different watch, but you have the money there. Once you get to that point, and maybe then you decide to save a little more, shoot a little higher, right? So if you save for that watch purchase, you're going to be way happier. You're going to be significantly happier with the purchase. And it will, honestly, if you use that time creatively, it will make that period of time, number one, go by relatively faster. But it will be a much more enjoyable experience if you take that time to shop around, find some places, hold the watch that you want to buy in your hands first. You know, I've purchased watches only because of their image and what I thought about the piece and some reviews I've read. And then I've found that it just doesn't work for me. That's why I always say, wear it on your, at least hold it, at least go into the store. Maybe it's all wrapped in plastic, but at least you have a visceral feel of what that watch is. And that's also another important aspect of watch collecting. It's not a strategy, although always touching watches you intend to buy is a strategy, which I do not follow. Feet of clay. It's one I should follow. And it's one I try to follow now. And most of my recent purchases, I was able to hold them in my hand physically. My latest purchase is I picked up that it's a MiG 21 dashboard or panel clock. My friend, I think I've mentioned, Hempt Jewelers here in Wiesbaden. He's retiring, and so he's selling everything at reasonable, very, very reasonable prices. Like that's how I got this Sattler wall clock. I got it for 30% off, 35. I got a really good price on it. Because like I said, he's retiring and I'm at the right place at the right time. That 65 millimeter Messerschmitt that I bought just on a lark. I did it because I got it at a good price because he sold it to me. I got to stay away from his place until after he retires. We'll just have some beers together because every time I go by there, I wind up buying something because, the old saying, you can go broke saving money. So, and then, yeah, so that basically the last aspect that when I think of strategies, you should really And, with the others, I was saying these are ways to do it. But one of the strategies, because you can use multiple strategies in developing your collection, but one of the strategies that I believe you should take is you should think about the roles you want the watches to play in your collection. I did a whole episode on that topic of what do you want the watches that you own to do for you? You know, do you want a dress watch? Do you want, I mean, people say you should buy a dress watch, a sports watch, what do you want? Maybe you don't need a dress watch. Maybe you need a beater, a sports watch, and a field watch, you know, or maybe just one nice dress watch and a G-Shock. Um, you have to think about what roles in the play of your life, the scenery, as it were. Do you spend a lot of time outdoors? Do you spend a lot of time in an office? Do you spend a lot of time tracking multiple time zones? Do you travel a lot? What do you do for leisure? Maybe you don't need a dive watch. Maybe you want a pilot's watch. What aspects of a watch appeal to you? How do you want to see that manifested in your collection? You know, if you like chronographs, yes. Do you want to dress chronograph? Or do you want to go the JLC route for a chronograph, or do you want to go the Tag Heuer route, or the Breitling route, or even the Rolex route? They're all chronographs, and they're all very different. Um, do you want just a knock around sports watch, field watch? There are a lot of watches now that fill that category. And some lean towards diving style, some lean towards field style, some look more casual but are rugged. When you think about the thing about this watch is that I wouldn't say it looks casual as much as it looks like um, your teacher in grade school, very, very prim and proper. The Nomos, this is a very clean design, beautiful piece, but it is like a mullet. It's got the party in the back with that beautiful movement. You really have to think about, yeah, where would you wear a watch? What kind of watch would you like? And then think about the watches that could fill those roles. Like, I'm very curious to see what's going to happen now that Breitling's bought Universal Genève. Everyone's expecting to see a pole router. I'm expecting to see a pole router. I'm expecting to see a tri-compacts. And frankly, if they just do those two right and put some other pieces out, they'll be okay. But they've got to do those right. They're going to be people seriously looking at them saying, yeah, you can't just, throw one of your current movements in it and slap another name on it and say that you're done. That's why Breitling themselves say it's going to take several years, because they're going to have to engineer some specific product for the new Universal Genève that both harkens back to the legacy, the impressive, respected legacy of the company, and yeah, the expectations of the marketplace today. So yeah, we want to see a pole router, but it better be a 39. I mean, I don't think that that you need a big pole router, but I would say a 39 to a 40. You don't want it too big for a watch that's a three-hander anyway. Um, but yeah, I could easily see a 39 millimeter pole router. And for the uh, tri-compacts and bicompacts, those were dress chronos. Because of the nature of a chrono, they now lend themselves to a relatively large face. I mean, you think about, like, the Junghans, the 7750 inside. It, it lends itself well to a nice big open face, the Navid timer. So I could easily see 40 to 42 millimeter watches, bicompacts, tricompacts, dress watches out of Universal Genève under Breitling. And frankly, I think that they're going to use that uh, company, Universal Genève, to go upmarket, because Breitling is considered pretty much of a mainstream watch manufacturer, and some people would call them premium watches and not luxury watches. So I think that Breitling is going to position Universal Genève as a high-end luxury watch brand, which is what it was. So they're not pushing too hard. They're not gonna release watches on their level or below. So they're gonna go high. I mean, Breitling goes right now from about what, four and change to 25 and change. I think the Universal Genevs are gonna start at like 8 or 9 and go up from there, in my humble opinion. Bravo Delta bought a Ball. Ball's a great company, and they were the original railroad watches. The term "get on the ball" meant ball watches, not the round rubber object. Ball Roadmaster Pilot GMT, nice watch. Dealer was having a Valentine's sale. I've had two Ball Chrono watches a couple of years ago. Very nice quality for the price point, especially on sale. Well, Ball is one of those companies that stuck between a rock and a hard place when it comes to their heritage and what they can make and what's available and what they can do. And they can make great pieces. I think they went a little bit too far down the cul-de-sac of being the helium loom watch company. I think if you know Ball, you know what I mean. But they're beautiful pieces and they're well-made pieces and they're great values. And sometimes you want good loom. Um, I think Ball is one of those companies that's struggling under bad market perception. Like, look at Rado. They're clawing their way out of the hole, and they've got a tremendous reputation. And luckily, the Captain Cook, they found a nice design that everybody likes. It's a retro design from the 70s, and it's given them a lot of traction. I mean, I own the Chrono Captain Cook myself. So Ball's a great company. They make some really nice pieces. They make a nice moon phase, in fact. Great company. But, that's the nice thing about watch collecting. There are so many beautiful opportunities to buy beautiful pieces that can really bring some joy into your life. And, I know people say, "Oh, it's a material thing. How can it bring joy?" Everything brings more or less joy into our life. And when you're a kid, a new pair of sneakers bring a lot of joy in your life. The the thing about watch ownership is, well, it depends on the person, obviously. Some people are looking at the monetary value. Some people, in my case, I like people to think the watch I'm wearing is cool because it's interesting, not because it's expensive. That's another reason why I don't like to wear it with the metal bracelets, which tend to make it more look like jewelry. I'm more about the watch, and the strap doesn't tell the time. The strap's not the part that tells the time, you know. And so, but then again, there are people who have a completely different opinion than mine. But then that ties also into collecting strategies. Why are you buying this? For what reason? What are your future plans with this? Uh, do you have a goal? Well, if you have a strategy, you have to have a goal, because otherwise you're buying watches on impulse. You're doing tactics. And Sun Tzu said, tactics makes for a spectacular war, but an eventual defeat. I'm paraphrasing. And strategy without tactics may lead to maybe a bloody war, but will lead to eventual victory. And that's the same thing if you're buying a watch. You can get beat by the marketplace. You spend too much for a watch, or you buy one that you shouldn't have bought, or you bought one and it turns out that, if you really took a little bit more time to look, you'd have found a better version of that exact same model from another dealer or another seller. Um, it's all part of how you buy, and accumulate these pieces. And that's what I'm saying. That's why you should have a strategy. And there are lots of ways to develop a strategy, but you have to have one, or you're going to be taken advantage of by the marketplace, if only in the area of impulse buys. Like, that's what the Swatch special editions are counting on. They're counting on a lot of people buying a lot of these watches on impulse, and then realizing, "Oh, maybe I won't wear that, mission to, Earth all that many times." They're supposedly gonna come out with a, Snoopy moon swatch. I'll probably buy it. I would rather buy the real silver Snoopy, but number 1, I'd have to sell a couple of pieces to scrape up the money, And 2, I'd probably still have to go on a waiting list for it because that's one of the few pieces that Omega actually has on a waiting list for. At least theirs is probably honest. Um, but they're gonna put some of these watches out. Like I this Snoopy Moonswatch, they're putting it out for the impulse buyers because I have a watch collecting strategy, but I'm still going to buy the Snoopy even though it doesn't fit into my collecting strategy. Well, I guess if you think about it as an inexpensive, cool watch to put into the case, just to have to look at because it's fun and occasionally wear, then it would fit. And if they, as long as they put it out at that same $250 price point, I mean, if they sell it for more, they better put at least a System 51 in it, which is an interesting thing to think about. Would you rather have the mechanical System 51 in your Swatch special edition, which would be more quaint and interesting and horological, but because of the nature of the System 51, it will eventually break and either be replaced or just not repaired, versus the quartz, which if you keep replacing the batteries, will run for a really, really long time. So, that's one of the questions, which is better in a cheap watch, quartz or mechanical? But yeah, if you buy on impulse, you're fighting tactics. You need to have a strategy to make sure that, with a plan, you unless it's a bad plan, but even a bad plan is better than no plan because a plan lets you at least look at things and plan things out and conceptualize alternatives and gives you the ability to be more discerning in your purchases. Buy smarter. Buy with a goal in mind, a strategy, and you'll be a happier watch collector, in my humble opinion. So we're almost at the top of the hour. I think I'm going to call it an evening. I've been rambling on this topic. I think we got some good stuff. Oh, Wasafao. Hi, Alex. Enjoy your perspective. When it comes to servicing watches, do I have any tips? Do I have a go-to guy or do I just deal with the original manufacturer to get the watch service? If it's still under warranty, I go to the AE. I mean AD. If it's under like I was having a little bit of a winding problem. Something's up with I think the winding rotor on my Captain Cook. I took it back to Chris, who was the dealer that I bought it from, because it was still under warranty. Whereas my son-in-law, his Sea Dweller, I sent it to my guy. Luckily I do have a guy that I trust with important pieces, and he fixed it to a dream, and it only cost me 400 euros, and he replaced one of the winding gears. I mean, so this is a really good watch guy, and he is charges reasonable watch making fees, as it were. So I would encourage you to ask around if you have to, and find a dealer that you can trust. Have them fix something you don't care about first, just to see. But it does help to develop a relationship with somebody. Or if you have a watch that just needs cleaning, have them do that. And then you're starting to get a business relationship with them, and you have an idea of the kind of work that they do on something that should be simple for any watchmaker. But yeah, that's what I would do is I would recommend developing a relationship. But if it's under warranty, I send it to the AD because they got to fix it. You know, Worst case scenario, they'll replace it. That doesn't bother me. Let's see. Hey, Armando. Unfortunately, I was just about to close. I run this live stream for about an hour, and we started at 10. But I encourage you to come check it out next week. I always keep it to the hour because I'd rather end it while we still have something to talk about than wind up going humming at the end trying to think of something to say. So yeah, we're pretty much at the top of the hour, so I'm going to close it out for this week. I hope you all have a fantastic week, and take care. Love you all, and have a fantastic day too. Hey, I'm glad you liked it, Armando. And I'm glad you all liked it. And I see we got some nice likes, and everybody came and spent some good time, and I really enjoyed your company. Take care.